The morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Cardinal, casting long golden rectangles across Italian marble floors. Robert Westfield adjusted the cuff of his tailored Tom Ford suit as he surveyed what was now the newest jewel in his hospitality empire. At 52, Robert carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who had spent decades building something substantial. His 6'2" frame remained athletic, despite his age, a testament to his disciplined morning workouts. Silver hair at his temples added distinguished character to an already commanding presence. "The renovations exceeded expectations," he said, voice deep and measured. "The Cardinal will be our flagship Manhattan property." His assistant nodded, making notes on her tablet as they walked through the 3 Michelin-star restaurant. Robert checked his Patek Philippe watch, a subtle habit developed over years of managing an enterprise valued at $4 billion. Time to Robert Westfield was perhaps the only commodity more precious than the real estate he had accumulated across 3 continents. "The staff has been fully vetted," he asked, pausing to examine the hand-blown glass fixtures that cast prismatic patterns across white tablecloths. "Every employee meets our standards," his director of operations assured him. "Many came with the acquisition, but all have been screened thoroughly." Robert nodded, though something in his expression suggested mild skepticism. He had built Westfield Hospitality Group from nothing, starting as a night manager at a modest hotel in Chicago 30 years ago. His attention to detail was legendary, his standards exacting. Nothing in his establishments was left to chance. As the management team led him through the dining room, Robert noticed her immediately. She moved between tables with unusual grace, arranging place settings with precision that bordered on artistry. Unlike the other servers who glanced nervously at the entourage of executives, this woman carried herself with quiet assurance, her long black hair secured in a simple ponytail that revealed delicate Asian features. "What's her name?" Robert asked, interrupting his CFO's financial projections. "Sir," the CFO followed his gaze. "I'm not sure, she's just a server." "No one is just anything in my establishments," Robert corrected, voice gentle but firm. "Everyone has a name and a story." The restaurant manager hurried over, following Robert's line of sight. "That's Sarah Lin, Mr. Westfield. She's been with the Cardinal for about 6 months." Robert watched as Sarah arranged crystal stemware, her movements economical and purposeful. There was something in her bearing that seemed incongruous with her position, a precision that suggested training beyond food service. "She's one of our most requested servers," the manager added. "Fluent in several languages, excellent with wine pairings. The regulars adore her." Robert nodded, filing the information away. In his experience, people were rarely exactly what they appeared to be on the surface. That had been one of the first lessons of building his empire, knowing that beneath the veneer of hospitality lay complex human stories. "Let's continue to the kitchen," he said, though his attention lingered on the server a moment longer. The tour proceeded smoothly, each department head presenting their section with well-rehearsed precision. Robert asked detailed questions about inventory systems, employee satisfaction, metrics, sustainability initiatives. His mind, however, kept returning to the poised server in the dining room. Something about her had triggered his finely tuned sense for the unusual, the exceptional hiding in plain sight. At 45 minutes into their inspection, fate intervened to confirm his instincts. The front doors of the Cardinal burst open with explosive force. 3 men in dark hoodies stormed into the restaurant, faces partially concealed, intentions immediately clear, as one shouted, "Everyone down now!" Chaos erupted instantly. Diners screamed and dove beneath tables. Expensive glassware shattered against marble floors. Servers dropped their trays in panic. Robert's security detail started to move, but they were positioned near the kitchen entrance, too far away to be immediately effective. Robert himself remained perfectly still, assessing the situation with the calm detachment that had served him through numerous business crises. "Wallets, phones, jewelry, everything valuable goes in the bahabi," the leader commanded, waving a pistol menacingly. "Anyone plays hero, people start dying." Robert watched in fascination as Sarah Lin's entire demeanor transformed. While everyone else displayed various stages of terror, she became perfectly still. Her breathing, controlled eyes tracking each gunman's position with mathematical precision. She had moved slightly behind a marble column, partially concealed, but with clear sight lines to all 3 assailants. "You pretty lady with the ponytail," the leader called, pointing his weapon directly at Sarah. Start collecting from these rich folks. Move. Sarah stepped forward with hands visible, but Robert noticed something the gunman missed. Her stance. Her feet were positioned in a way that suggested coiled energy. Her center of gravity was lower than normal. Her breathing remained impossibly steady. Of course, Sarah said calmly, approaching the nearest table where an elderly couple sat trembling. Just please don't hurt anyone. The gunman relaxed slightly, thinking he'd found a compliant helper. That was his first and final mistake. Sarah moved with fluid precision that defied physics. In one seamless motion, she grabbed the edge of a marble-topped side table and spun it toward the leader, while simultaneously dropping low and sweeping the legs of the second gunman. The heavy table caught the leader in the midsection, sending him crashing into an ornate wine display. Before the third gunman could react, Sarah had rolled behind the bar and launched herself over it in a spectacular aerial maneuver. Her foot connected with his wrist, sending his weapon flying while her elbow found his solar plexus with surgical accuracy. He crumpled instantly. The second gunman scrambled for his dropped weapon, but Sarah was already there. She delivered a precise strike to a pressure point on his neck, and he joined his accomplice in unconsciousness. The entire encounter had lasted less than 30 seconds. The restaurant fell into stunned silence. Sarah straightened her uniform, checked her ponytail, and looked around at the debris with genuine concern. "I'm sorry about the mess," she said to Robert, who stood frozen in amazement. "I know this will require extensive cleanup. Are you seriously apologizing for saving everyone's lives?" Robert found his voice, though it came out rougher than intended. "I'm apologizing for the property damage," Sarah replied, her professional mask sliding back into place. "The insurance paperwork alone will be a nightmare." Police sirens wailed in the distance as Robert's security team finally reached them, looking sheepish and unnecessary. Robert couldn't take his eyes off Sarah, who was now helping the elderly couple back to their feet with gentle reassurance. "Where exactly did you learn to fight like that?" he asked, approaching her carefully. Sarah's expression became guarded instantly. "YouTube videos," she said flatly. "Amazing in what you can learn online these days." Robert almost laughed at the obvious lie, but something in her eyes warned him away from pushing further. "Right, YouTube," one of his security guards interrupted. "The police want statements from everyone, Mr. Westfield. Should we handle it?" "Make sure they know Ms. Lin is a hero, not a suspect," Robert said without looking away from Sarah. "I'm not a hero," Sarah said quietly. "I'm just someone who reacts quickly in dangerous situations. It's not complicated." But it was complicated, Robert realized. Everything about this woman was complicated. The way she moved suggested years of intensive training. Her situational awareness was military level. Her calm under pressure indicated experience with violence that no ordinary server should possess. As the police took statements and medical personnel attended to minor injuries, Robert retreated to the Cardinal's private office. He sat behind the antique desk, mind racing with questions about Sarah Lin. There was a story there one he suddenly felt compelled to uncover. "Get me her employee file," he instructed his HR director over the phone. "Complete background, employment history references. Everything we have." "Sir, is there a problem with her performance?" the director asked. "Quite the opposite," Robert replied. "I want to know everything about the woman who just single-handedly stopped an armed robbery in my restaurant." The file arrived via secure email 30 minutes later, and Robert's suspicions deepened as he reviewed the sparse documentation. Sarah Lin's employment application contained the minimum required information, a driver's license, social security card, and basic contact details. No previous employment history beyond the past 2 years. No educational background. No references. Most concerning was the complete absence of any social media presence, unusual for someone her age. It was as if Sarah Lin had materialized out of thin air 2 years ago. Robert closed the file, staring out at the Manhattan skyline. The last time something had captured his attention this completely had been 7 years ago, when his wife Catherine was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer. The memories washed over him, unbidden, painful still, after all this time. He remembered the hospital rooms the specialists flown in from around the world, the experimental treatments that had bought precious months, but not years. Catherine had faced her illness with the same grace and strength she'd brought to their 22-year marriage. When she finally slipped away, Robert had thrown himself into his work, expanding Westfield Hospitality Group at an unprecedented rate. Their daughter Elise, now 24 and studying at Stanford, had accused him of using work to avoid grief. She wasn't entirely wrong. The emptiness of their family home in Greenwich had become unbearable. The hotels and restaurants, with their constant activity and endless problems to solve, offered refuge from the silence. Now watching the police lead away the would-be robbers in handcuffs, Robert felt something he hadn't experienced in years: genuine curiosity about another person. Not as a business associate or potential asset, but as a human mystery. "Sir, the police would like a statement." His security chief appeared in the doorway. Robert nodded, rising from behind the desk. "Has Ms. Lin given hers?" She was quite brief, apparently. Downplayed her involvement. "Of course she did," Robert murmured. By the time Robert finished with the police, Sarah Lin had disappeared. The manager informed him she'd been given the rest of the day off, understandable after the morning's events. Robert found himself disappointed, though he couldn't quite articulate why. He spent the next week monitoring the Cardinal from a distance, reviewing daily reports and security footage. He told himself it was standard procedure following a security incident, but his attention repeatedly drifted to the comings and goings of a certain server. On footage from the kitchen, he observed Sarah's interactions with other staff. She was unfailingly polite but maintained a careful distance. She arrived precisely 15 minutes early for each shift, changed into her uniform with military efficiency, and reviewed the evening's reservations with focus that bordered on academic. "She's something else, isn't she?" Robert turned to find Marcus Rossi, the Cardinal's 60-year-old head chef, standing beside him in the security room. "Ms. Lin, what do you mean?" "That girl approaches serving tables like a master chess player approaches a tournament," Marcus observed. "She anticipates needs before guests realize they have them, knows which tables will order dessert based on their appetizer choices, can predict when someone will need their wine glass refilled by their conversation patterns. It's remarkable." "You think she's overqualified for this job?" Robert asked carefully. Marcus laughed softly. "Think she's overqualified for this planet, but whatever brought her here, she works harder than anyone else and never complains. The other servers respect her because she makes their jobs easier." Robert nodded thoughtfully. "How long have you known her?" "Since she started 6 months ago. She keeps to herself, but she's always professional, never talks about her past." Marcus hesitated. "Not that I'm gossiping about my staff, Mr. Westfield." "Of course not. Just trying to understand the dynamics of the team." Robert closed the security footage. "Thank you for your insights, Chef Rossi." After Marcus left, Robert remained in the security room, troubled by his own unusual interest. In his position, he had learned to maintain professional distance from employees. Yet something about Sarah Lin had captured his attention in a way that felt almost personal. The following evening, Robert arrived at the Cardinal shortly before closing. He took a small table in the corner, observing the final service of the night. Sarah moved through the dining room with that same economical grace he'd noticed before handling a demanding table of executives with diplomatic skill. He watched as she conversed fluently in French with an elderly couple, then switched seamlessly to what sounded like Mandarin with a family celebrating a birthday. When an especially difficult customer sent back his steak 3 times, Sarah handled the situation with unflappable calm, never once revealing frustration. As the restaurant emptied and the cleaning staff began their work, Robert remained at his table nursing a glass of single malt scotch. Sarah approached his table with quiet confidence. "Mr. Westfield, can I get you anything else before we close?" she asked, her expression professional but guarded. "Please join me for a moment," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. Her hesitation was momentary but noticeable. "I should help with closing." "The others can manage for 5 minutes," Robert said gently. "Please." Sarah sat with the perfect posture of someone who had been trained to be constantly aware of her body's position in space. "How can I help you, Mr. Westfield?" "First, I wanted to properly thank you for what you did during the robbery. You showed exceptional courage." "Anyone would have done the same," she demurred. "We both know that's not true," Robert replied. "Most people froze. You acted decisively and saved lives." Sarah's expression remained neutral, but he noticed a slight tension in her shoulders. "Is there something specific you wanted to discuss?" Robert studied her for a moment. "Your file is remarkably sparse, Ms. Lin. Most employees include references, previous work experience, educational background. Your file contains a driver's license, social security card, and nothing else. Is there a problem with my work performance? Sarah's voice remained steady, but Robert noticed her hands had unconsciously moved to a defensive position. Quite the opposite. Your work is exceptional, which makes your minimal background even more intriguing. Mr. Westfield, I do my job well. I'm punctual, professional, and I don't cause problems. In most places, that's enough. This isn't most places, Robert countered. This is a 3 Michelin star establishment where every employee undergoes extensive background screening. Then perhaps you should have screened me more thoroughly before hiring me. Her voice had an edge now. You're doing it again, Robert observed. Doing what? Turning the conversation back on me instead of answering questions about yourself. It's a sophisticated deflection technique. Or maybe I just value my privacy. Sarah's dark eyes met his without wavering. Privacy is one thing, mystery is another. Robert leaned forward slightly. The way you fought those men required years of professional training. Your knowledge of wine service suggests formal sommelier education. Your intuitive understanding of fine dining protocols indicates experience in establishments far above this level. And yet you work here as a server, live in a small apartment in Queens, and act like you've never been anywhere or done anything interesting. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, studying his face. You've been investigating me. I've been trying to understand you. There's a difference. Is there one comes from suspicion, the other from curiosity? And which is this? Robert considered the question seriously. Honestly, both. The way you handled those gunmen was impressive but concerning. That level of skill doesn't come from casual self-defense classes. Maybe I'm just naturally coordinated. The hint of a smile touched her lips. And maybe I'm naturally humble. We both know neither is true. Despite herself, Sarah's lips quirked upward. You are asking me to trust you with personal information. But what exactly have you done to earn that trust? Fair point. Robert nodded. What would it take? For starters, stop investigating my background. If you wanted to know something about me, ask me directly. All right, Sarah Lin, where did you learn to fight like that? Sarah hesitated, then answered quietly. My grandfather taught me. Where? San Francisco's Chinatown. Why did you leave? The almost smile disappeared entirely. That's not a fair question. Why isn't it fair? Because you're not ready for that answer, and I'm not ready to give it. Robert felt himself being drawn deeper into the puzzle that was Sarah Lin. Every answer she gave raised 3 new questions, and every defensive response made him more determined to understand what she was protecting herself from. Have dinner with me, he said suddenly. Mr. Westfield. She began, her tone warning. Robert, just Robert, and not as your employer, as someone who finds you fascinating and wants to know more. Why is this so important to you? The question stopped him cold. Why was it important? He dated occasionally beautiful and accomplished women who moved in the same social circles. None had captured his interest the way this mysterious server had in the span of a few days. Because I've spent my entire adult life surrounded by people who want something from me, he said finally. Money connections, social status, business opportunities. But you don't want anything. You actively discourage my interest. In my world, that's so rare it's practically extinct. Sarah's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Maybe I don't want anything because I've learned that everything comes with a price. What if it doesn't? Everything does, Robert. The question is whether you're willing to pay it when the bill comes due. Before he could respond, Sarah glanced at her watch and straightened her uniform. I need to start my closing duties, if you'll excuse me. She walked away, leaving Robert sitting alone among the empty tables, wondering why rejection from a waitress felt like the most significant thing that had happened to him in years. 3 days after their conversation, Robert found himself doing something unprecedented, sitting in his car outside the Cardinal at 1 a.m. waiting. The rational part of his mind told him this behavior bordered on inappropriate. The part that had been dormant since Catherine's death urged him to stay. His patience was rewarded when the staff exit door opened and Sarah emerged, now dressed in simple black athletic wear. She looked up and down the street cautiously before turning toward the subway station. Robert was about to start his car and leave when she suddenly changed direction, heading down a narrow alley beside the restaurant. Curiosity overcoming better judgment, He quietly exited his car and followed at a distance. The alley opened into a small service courtyard illuminated by security lights. There in the pale glow, Sarah Lin was practicing martial arts forms with deadly precision. Robert stood frozen in the doorway, watching Sarah move through what appeared to be an advanced kata with breathtaking fluidity. Her hair flowed loose around her shoulders as she executed techniques that were clearly lethal in their precision. She spun, kicked, struck invisible opponents with combinations that would have been devastating against real attackers. This wasn't casual practice. It was the disciplined training of someone maintaining skills that had taken years to develop. Every movement spoke of muscle memory earned through countless hours of repetition. Sarah sensed his presence without breaking rhythm, completing her form before turning to face him with calm alertness. "Mr. Westfield," she said, neither surprised nor particularly concerned to find him there. "Robert," he corrected automatically. "And yes, apparently not as late as some people. I prefer to practice when there's no audience. How's that working out for you?" Despite herself, Sarah smiled. "Well, apparently." Robert stepped into the courtyard, noting how Sarah's stance shifted to maintain distance while keeping escape routes clear. That was beautiful. Also terrifying, but beautiful. It's just exercise. That was combat training at a level most military units would envy. Robert moved closer, stopping when he sensed her discomfort. "Where exactly did your grandfather teach you to move like that?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment, studying his face in the dim light. Something in his expression must have convinced her to drop at least one layer of defensive pretense. "My grandfather was Master Wei Chen," she said finally. "He taught traditional kung fu in San Francisco's Chinatown for 40 years. I started training with him when I was 4 years old." Robert recognized the name immediately. Wei Chen had been legendary in martial arts circles, a master who had trained champions, and whose school had produced fighters who dominated international competitions. "Wei Chen was your grandfather, the Wei Chen." "You've heard of him?" Sarah seemed genuinely surprised. "Anyone who's ever studied martial arts has heard of him. He was considered one of the greatest masters of his generation. His school produced more champions than any other institution in North America." Sarah's expression became guarded again. "Most people don't know that much about traditional kung fu." "I studied taekwondo in college," Robert explained. "Not seriously, but enough to recognize expertise when I see it. Your grandfather was famous for only accepting students who demonstrated exceptional dedication and natural ability." "He made exceptions for family," Sarah said, beginning to gather her things. "I doubt that," Robert replied. "Wei Chen was known for being harder on his relatives than anyone else. If he trained you personally, it's because you had extraordinary talent." Sarah began gathering her things, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "It was a long time ago." "How long ago did you leave?" The question made her pause. "I didn't leave. I was sent away." "By whom?" "My family." Something in her tone warned him not to push further. Instead, he took a different approach. "Are you hungry?" he asked. "What?" "It's almost 2 in the morning. You just finished a 10-hour shift followed by what looked like an hour of intensive training. I'm betting you haven't eaten anything substantial since lunch." "I'm fine." "That wasn't the question." "Are you hungry?" Sarah hesitated, then nodded slightly. "Yes. I know a place. Nothing fancy, just good food and no dress code required." "Robert." "Not a date," he clarified quickly. "Just food. 2 people who happen to be hungry at the same time eating in the same location. No expectation, no agenda." "Why are you being so persistent?" The question held genuine confusion. "Because you're the first person I've met in years who challenges me to be more than just rich. You make me want to earn your respect instead of buying it." Sarah looked at him for a long moment, weighing something in her mind. "One condition." "Name it." "No more questions about my past tonight. We can talk about anything else, but my personal history is off limits." "Deal." The diner Robert chose was a 24-hour place in Queens that served truck drivers, night shift workers, and insomniacs who needed comfort food at unusual hours. Sarah seemed to relax as soon as they walked in. The casual atmosphere and working-class clientele apparently felt safer to her than elegant restaurants filled with people who might have expectations or judgments. They found a booth in the back corner, and Sarah ordered pancakes with a side of bacon, while Robert requested coffee and apple pie. She ate with genuine hunger, and Robert found himself fascinated by this glimpse of Sarah without her professional mask. Can I ask about Kung Fu without it counting as personal history, he ventured? Depends on the question. The form you were practicing. What style was it? Northern Shaolin with elements of Wing Chun, she answered. My grandfather believed in combining traditional techniques with practical applications. How many hours a day did you train? When I was younger, 4 to 6 hours after school, more on weekends. Training wasn't optional in our family. She took another bite of pancakes. Do you miss it? Sarah paused with her fork halfway to her mouth. Miss what? Competing. From what I understand, someone with your background would have been eligible for national team's international competition. I was never interested in competition. Why not Baba? Because Kung Fu isn't a sport, she said with unexpected passion. It's a way of life, a philosophy, a means of protecting yourself and others. Turning it into entertainment diminishes its purpose. Robert found himself leaning forward, drawn in by her conviction. But surely your grandfather would have been proud to see you compete at the highest levels. My grandfather cared more about character than trophies, Sarah replied. He used to say that the most important victories happen when nobody's watching. Like 3 nights ago in the restaurant, Robert suggested. Sarah met his eyes directly. Exactly like 3 nights ago. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, and Robert noticed Sarah gradually relaxing. Her shoulders lost their defensive tension, and she began to make occasional eye contact instead of constantly scanning for exits. Your turn, she said eventually. For what? To answer questions. Fair is fair. What do you want to know? Why restaurants? You could have gone into any business, but you chose hospitality. Why pies? Robert considered the question seriously. Because food brings people together. It's one of the few industries where success depends on making people genuinely happy rather than just separating them from their money. That's surprisingly idealistic for a billionaire. You think billionaires can't be idealistic? He asked with a half smile. I think it's easier to be idealistic when you can afford the luxury of principles, Sarah countered. That's cynical even for you. Sarah shrugged. Experience teaches cynicism. What kind of experience? The words slipped out before he could stop himself. She gave him a warning look. That counts as personal history. Sorry, force of habit. They finished eating as the first hints of dawn began lightening the sky outside. Robert found himself reluctant to end the evening, which had been the most genuinely relaxing conversation he had had in months. Can I drive you home? He offered as they stood to leave. I can take the subway. It's 5 in the morning and you live in Queens. Let me drive you. Sarah hesitated, then nodded. Thank you. During the drive to Sarah's neighborhood, they talked about books, movies, and music. Neutral topics that revealed shared interest in classic literature and obscure foreign films. Robert discovered that Sarah was far more widely read than her job suggested, with opinions on authors and subjects that indicated formal education well beyond high school. When they reached her building, a converted warehouse in an industrial area that was slowly gentrifying, Sarah turned to him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Thank you for dinner and for not pushing when I asked you not to. Thank you for giving me a chance to prove I'm not completely terrible, Robert replied. Jury's still out on that, Sarah said, but she was smiling. Good night, Robert. As he watched her disappear into her building, Robert felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a quiet sense of anticipation. For the first time since Catherine's death, he found himself looking forward to tomorrow. What he didn't know was that his longtime friend and CFO Richard Webb had been following them since they left the restaurant, taking photographs and making plans that would soon threaten everything they were beginning to build. Richard Webb had been Robert Westfield's CFO for 10 years, best friend for 25, and secret enemy for the past 6 months. As he sat in his penthouse reviewing the photographs of Robert and Sarah, his jaw tightened with barely controlled rage. Sarah Lin wasn't just some waitress who'd caught Robert's attention. She was the granddaughter of Wei Chen, the legendary kung fu master whose dojo Richard had desperately tried to join as a teenager, only to be rejected for lacking the discipline and character Wei demanded from his students. The old man had looked right through him, seeing the anger and entitlement that drove him, and had dismissed him with words that still burned 15 years later. You seek power, not wisdom. Find another teacher. Now Wei Chen's granddaughter was threatening to derail the most important business deal of Richard's career. Webb Industries stood to make $40 million from a partnership with Victor Zhang's international consortium, a deal that would only proceed if Robert remained focused on business rather than getting distracted by romantic entanglements with inappropriate women. More importantly, Richard had embezzled $30 million from Westfield Hospitality Group to cover gambling debts that had spiraled out of control. If Robert's attention turned to the company's finances too closely, everything would unravel. Richard picked up his phone and dialed a number he had hoped never to use. "It's Webb," he said quietly. "I need you to connect me with Mr. Zhang. We have a problem that requires immediate attention." The voice on the other end was cold and professional. "What kind of problem?" "The kind involving a woman who should have disappeared years ago. Lin Mei." There was a long pause on the line. "Mr. Zhang will be very interested in this information." While Richard was making arrangements to destroy her life, Sarah Lin, whose real name was Lin Mei, was experiencing something she thought was impossible. Hope. For the first time in 4 years, she'd allowed herself to imagine a future that didn't involve hiding, running, or constantly looking over her shoulder. 3 months passed, and autumn painted Central Park in fiery hues of amber and crimson. Robert Westfield found himself visiting the Cardinal with increasing frequency, always with plausible business explanations that fooled no one on his executive team. His chief marketing officer had started scheduling meetings at the restaurant without being asked, smiling knowingly when Robert failed to object. The Cardinal had flourished under Westfield ownership, reservation wait times extending to 3 months, as word spread about the impeccable service and world-class cuisine. Sarah Lin had become something of a legend among regular patrons, requested by name and tipped generously for her uncanny ability to anticipate needs before they were spoken. Robert watched her from a discreet distance, respecting the boundaries she had established that night at the diner. He had stopped investigating her background, but found other ways to learn about her through observation. Small gestures that demonstrated his attention without intrusion, improving the lighting in the staff parking area, upgrading the employee break room, implementing a comprehensive health insurance plan that exceeded industry standards. On a rain-soaked Tuesday evening in October, Robert was leaving the Cardinal after a late dinner meeting when he noticed Sarah standing beneath the restaurant's awning, staring at the downpour with unusual indecision. Her shift had ended 30 minutes earlier, and she appeared to be waiting for the storm to ease. "Can I offer you a ride home?" Robert asked, approaching with deliberate noise so as not to startle her. Sarah turned, surprise briefly visible before her composed expression returned. "Thank you, but the subway is fine. In this weather, you'll be soaked before you reach the station." As if to emphasize his point, a gust of wind drove rain sideways beneath the awning, misting them both with fine droplets. Sarah hesitated, glancing at her watch. "Actually, I just remembered the Q train is under maintenance tonight. The detour would add 40 minutes to my commute." Robert recognized the graceful acceptance of his offer for what it was, a small but significant shift in their carefully maintained distance. "My car is in the private lot around the corner," he said, opening a large black umbrella. "Shall we?" The short walk to the parking garage passed in companionable silence, their shoulders occasionally brushing as they navigated puddles beneath the shared umbrella. Robert's Aston Martin waited in its reserved space, elegant and understated in gunmetal gray. "This is not what I expected," Sarah remarked as she settled into the passenger seat, running her hand appreciatively over the hand-stitched leather. "What were you expecting?" "A Rolls-Royce Lamborghini." "Something more ostentatious," she admitted. "This is almost subtle." "I saved the flashier cars for impressing business associates," Robert replied, starting the engine. "This one is just for me." The drive through rain-slick Manhattan streets was unexpectedly comfortable. Sarah gave directions to her apartment in Queens, and Robert navigated through the late evening traffic with practiced ease. Classical music played softly from the car's audio system, a Rachmaninoff piano concerto that filled the silence without demanding conversation. "You know your way around the city well," Sarah observed as Robert took an unexpected turn that avoided a flooded underpass. "I drove cabs for 3 years while putting myself through college," he replied. "The geography of New York is etched into my brain permanently." "You were a cab driver?" Sarah sounded genuinely surprised. "The official Westfield biography mentions nothing about that." "The official biography also claims I graduated from Wharton," Robert said with a wry smile. "In reality, I attended community college for 2 years before dropping out to work full-time. PR firms prefer prestigious fiction to humble truth. Why tell me the truth then? Robert considered the question as he navigated onto the Queensboro Bridge. Perhaps because you've never been impressed by the fiction. Rain drummed steadily on the roof as they crossed into Queens, the Manhattan skyline receding behind them, jewel-bright through sheets of water. Sarah directed him through increasingly residential neighborhoods until they reached her apartment building, the converted warehouse standing stark against the night sky. "Thank you for the ride," she said as Robert pulled up to the entrance. "Would you like to come up for coffee? It seems only fair after you drove all this way." The invitation surprised him. "Are you sure?" "It's just coffee, Robert," she said, though something in her expression suggested she recognized the significance of the invitation. "And it's pouring. You shouldn't drive back immediately anyway." Her apartment was on the fourth floor, a corner unit with windows on two sides. The space was sparsely furnished but meticulously organized. Bookshelves lined one wall filled with volumes on diverse subjects: philosophy, history, martial arts, wine appreciation, and classical literature in multiple languages. A small collection of Chinese calligraphy scrolls adorned another wall, the only personal decoration in the otherwise utilitarian space. "Quite a library," Robert remarked, scanning the titles while Sarah prepared coffee in the small kitchen. "Books are easier to move than furniture," she replied, her back to him as she measured coffee beans into a grinder. The simple statement contained volumes of unspoken history. Robert noted the lack of photographs, mementos, or any items that would connect her to a specific place or time. This was the home of someone prepared to leave at a moment's notice. "French press or pour over?" she asked. "Whichever you prefer," Robert answered, continuing to study her collection. "You have an impressive selection of wine books. Some of these are advanced sommelier text." Sarah appeared with two steaming mugs, a hobby. "Most hobbies don't involve memorizing the soil composition of every wine-growing region in France," Robert observed, accepting the coffee gratefully. "You speak multiple languages fluently, possess extensive wine knowledge, and could teach combat tactics to special forces. That's an unusual combination of skills for someone your age." "Perhaps I'm unusually dedicated to self-improvement," she countered, settling into a simple chair across from him. "Or perhaps there's more to your story than you're willing to share." Robert took a sip of the coffee, which was expertly prepared. "This is excellent, by the way." "Another hobby." Sarah tucked her legs beneath her, seeming more relaxed in her own space than he had ever seen her. "Since we're noting unusual skills, you have an impressive knowledge of martial arts lineages for a hospitality CEO. I've always been fascinated by disciplines that require complete dedication," Robert admitted. "When I was younger, I thought I might pursue martial arts seriously, but business demanded too much time. I've maintained an interest, though." "Is that why you keep visiting the cardinal academic interest in my background?" The directness of the question caught him off guard. "No, that's not why." "Then why you own dozens of establishments across 3 continents? Surely the cardinal isn't uniquely demanding of your personal attention." Robert considered his response carefully. "In my position, I'm surrounded by people who calculate their every word and action based on what they think I want to hear. It's refreshing to interact with someone who has no interest in impressing me." "You find honesty novel." There was a hint of amusement in her voice. "I find your particular brand of honesty compelling," he corrected. "You're direct without being cruel, private without being deceptive." "You make me sound more virtuous than I am," Sarah said, her expression sobering. "I've told my share of lies, Robert. Haven't we all?" The rain intensified outside, drumming against the windows as they sipped their coffee in companionable silence. For the first time since Catherine's death, Robert felt the simple pleasure of being in someone's company, without agenda or expectation. "I should go," he said, eventually setting down his empty mug. "It's getting late." Sarah walked him to the door. "Thank you again for the ride." "Thank you for the coffee and conversation." Robert hesitated at the threshold. "Perhaps we could do this again sometime." "Perhaps," she replied, neither promising nor refusing. As Robert drove back to Manhattan, he reflected on the evening with a sense of quiet satisfaction. Something had shifted between them, a small but significant step toward trust. In his world of rapid acquisitions and instant gratification, this gradual building of connection felt strangely valuable. What Robert couldn't know was that across town, Richard Webb was cementing a very different kind of connection. The private room at the Mandarin Oriental Hotel offered sweeping views of Columbus Circle 20 floors below. Richard Webb stood at the window, watching raindrops trace chaotic patterns down the glass as he waited for his guest to arrive. The suite cost $7,000 per night, an extravagance that would have been questioned had it appeared on the Westfield hospitality expense reports. Fortunately, Victor Zhang had insisted on covering the cost. The door opened silently, and Victor Zhang entered with the casual confidence of a man accustomed to wielding power. At 58, Zhang maintained the physique of someone 20 years younger, his bespoke suit emphasizing broad shoulders and a still trim waist. Only the silver at his temples and the lines etched around his eyes suggested his true age. "Mr. Webb," Zhang said, extending his hand, "I trust I find you well." "Very well, thank you," Richard replied, shaking the offered hand firmly. "I appreciate you making time on such short notice. Your message indicated matters of mutual interest. I always make time for mutual interests." Zhang moved to the bar, selecting a crystal decanter. "Scotch, please." Zhang poured two generous measures, handing one to Richard, before taking a seat in a leather armchair positioned to command both the view and the room. "You have information about Lin Mei," Zhang stated, the question implicit. Richard nodded, retrieving a manila envelope from his briefcase. "These were taken over the past 3 months." Zhang examined the photographs methodically, his expression revealing nothing as he studied images of Lin Mei, now called Sarah Lin, working at the Cardinal, practicing martial arts in the alleyway, and most recently entering her apartment building with Robert Westfield. "She has changed very little," Zhang remarked, his tone almost appreciative. "Still beautiful, still dangerous. She goes by Sarah Lin now," Richard explained. "Works as a server at the Cardinal, which was recently acquired by Westfield Hospitality Group. And she has developed a relationship with Robert Westfield himself," Zhang observed, tapping the photograph of them together. "Interesting. I wouldn't call it a relationship yet," Richard clarified. "Robert is intrigued by her, but they're moving slowly." "Why bring this to me, Mr. Webb?" Zhang set the photographs aside, fixing Richard with an evaluating gaze. "We have a business arrangement concerning your company's expansion into Asian markets. How does Lin Mei factor into this?" Richard took a deep breath. "2 reasons. First, I believe Robert's interest in her could distract him from our deal, potentially delaying or derailing it. Second, I know of your prior association with Lin Mei." Association," Zhang repeated the word with faint amusement. "A diplomatic choice of words. She testified against me in a sealed federal proceeding 4 years ago, Mr. Webb. Her testimony nearly destroyed everything I spent decades building. Which is why I thought you should know her whereabouts." Zhang studied Richard over the rim of his glass. "You're concerned about our business deal, certainly. But there's something more personal here. What is your interest in Lin Mei?" Richard hesitated, then decided on honesty. "Her grandfather Wei Chun rejected me from his school when I was younger. Said I lacked character." The admission still stung decades later. "Ah," Zhang nodded with understanding. "Old wounds from a martial arts master. I can appreciate that motivation." He set down his glass. "There's something else you are not telling me, though. Something about your financial situation, perhaps?" Richard felt cold sweat forming at his temples. "What do you mean, Mr. Webb? I don't enter partnerships without thorough due diligence. You've been losing substantial sums at various establishments in Atlantic City and Las Vegas. Approximately $12 million over the past 18 months, if my information is correct." "How did you please?" Zhang raised a hand. "In my position, information is simply another commodity to acquire. More concerning is that certain financial discrepancies have appeared in Westfield Hospitality's accounts. Discrepancies that an ordinary audit might not catch, but that would be immediately apparent should anyone conduct a forensic examination of the books." Richard's mouth went dry. "Are you threatening me?" "Quite the opposite," Zhang replied smoothly. "I'm acknowledging our mutual vulnerabilities. You need this partnership to succeed before Robert Westfield discovers your creative accounting. I need to resolve unfinished business with Lin Mei before her testimony can be used against me again. We can help each other." "What exactly are you proposing?" Zhang smiled, a gesture that never reached his eyes. "First, we accelerate the partnership agreement. Second, you continue providing information about Lin Mei's movements and associations. Third, you ensure certain immigration authorities receive anonymous tips about irregularities in her documentation. That last part, Richard frowned. What would that accomplish? It would make her nervous, Zhang explained. People who are nervous make mistakes. When she makes mistakes, she becomes vulnerable. When she's vulnerable, he left the sentence unfinished. And what do I get in return? Beyond the 40 million your company stands to make from our partnership, a personal bonus of 5 million, untraceable to Cayman accounts, and my guarantee that your financial indiscretions remain undiscovered. Richard considered the offer. He had already embezzled nearly 30 million from Westfield hospitality money he had no hope of replacing before the next major audit. His gambling debts continued to mount, despite promises to himself that each bet would be his last. I'll need assurances that nothing can be traced back to me, he said finally. Mr. Webb, Zhang replied, refilling their glasses. Discretion is the foundation of all lasting partnerships. You have my word. As they shook hands to seal their arrangement, Richard felt a momentary pang of guilt about betraying Robert, his friend of 25 years. He quickly suppressed it. In business, as in gambling, one had to know when to cut losses and maximize gains. Robert would recover from a broken heart. Richard would not recover from federal prison for embezzlement. 2 weeks later, Lin Mei was restocking wine in the Cardinal's temperature-controlled cellar when Marcus Rossi, the head chef, found her with unusual urgency in his normally composed demeanor. Sarah, I need to speak with you privately, he said, glancing over his shoulder to ensure they were alone. What's wrong? She asked immediately, alert to the tension in his voice. Immigration Services received an anonymous tip this morning claiming you're working under false documentation. The blood drained from Lin Mei's face as Marcus continued. They're conducting a full investigation into your employment status, legal documentation, background verification. Lin Mei set down the bottle she was holding, with deliberate care, her mind racing. Her documentation was legitimate in the sense that it would pass standard scrutiny, but it wouldn't withstand deep investigation. It had been created by people who specialized in helping victims disappear from dangerous situations. Immigration investigators would eventually trace the documents back to their source, potentially exposing not just Lin Mei, but an entire network that helped women escape abusive situations and unwanted marriages. Who would do this? She whispered, though she already suspected the answer. I don't know, Marcus replied, his weathered face creased with concern. But I have friends at the regional office. They've given us a small window before the formal investigation begins. Maybe 2 days. I have to quit, Lin Mei said quietly, already calculating what she could take, what she would leave behind, which identity she would assume next. Sarah, no, Marcus placed a gentle hand on her arm. We can fight this. Robert has excellent lawyers. I can't involve Robert in this, she insisted. If immigration connects him to my case, it could damage his businesses, his reputation. I won't let that happen. Then what will you do? Lin Mei straightened her shoulders. Decision made. What I've always done, disappear. Marcus's expression darkened. You don't have to live like this. Whatever you're running from there might be another way. You don't understand, Lin Mei said softly. The people I'm running from don't give up. They don't forgive, and they have enough money and connections to destroy anyone who tries to help me. That evening, Lin Mei packed her few belongings into a single duffel bag, the same routine she'd performed in 3 different cities over the past 4 years. Leave no trace. Take nothing that couldn't be replaced. Disappear before anyone realized she was gone. She was almost finished when she heard a knock at her door. Instantly alert, she positioned herself to the side of the entrance, peering through the peephole cautiously. Robert Westfield stood in the hallway alone and uncharacteristically disheveled. Lin Mei hesitated, then opened the door. Robert, what are you doing here? Marcus told me what happened, he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. We need to talk. He stopped short when he saw the pack bag on her bed. You're leaving. I have to. No, you don't. We can handle this together. I have lawyers, investigators, resources. Robert, stop. Lin Mei's voice was firm but not unkind. This isn't your fight. Like hell it isn't, he countered, frustration evident in his tone. Someone is targeting you to get to me. That makes it absolutely my fight. Lin Mei turned to face him fully, and Robert saw something in her eyes that made his blood run cold. This wasn't fear or uncertainty. This was the look of someone who'd made a final decision and wouldn't be swayed by arguments or emotions. "You think this is about you, but it's not," she said quietly. "This is about my past catching up with me just like I always knew it would." "What past? Talk to me, Sarah. Whatever this is, we can handle it." "I can't tell you." "Why not?" "Because you're a good man who believes problems can be solved with money and determination. But some problems don't have solutions. Some people can't be fought or reasoned with or bought off. Sometimes the only option is to run." Robert moved closer, his voice desperate. "I'm not letting you disappear from my life because someone sent an anonymous tip to immigration." "It won't stop with immigration," Lin Mei replied, her voice flat, emotionless. "Next, it'll be the IRS. Then criminal investigations based on planted evidence. Then threats against people I care about. It escalates until everyone around me is in danger." "Who is it? Who are you so afraid of?" Lin Mei was quiet for a long moment, weighing how much truth she could safely share. "His name is Victor Zhang, the business mogul. We've been negotiating a partnership with his consortium." Robert's expression shifted from confusion to concern. "What possible connection could you have to Victor Zhang?" Lin Mei took a deep breath, decision made. She gestured to the small table in her kitchen. "You might want to sit down for this." Robert followed her to the table, watching as she poured 2 glasses of water with hands that trembled slightly despite her outward composure. "My real name is Lin Mei," she began. "4 years ago, I testified in a sealed federal proceeding against Victor Zhang's organization." "Testified about what?" "Human trafficking. Zhang's legitimate businesses are a front for moving young women from China to the United States under false pretenses." Lin Mei's voice remained steady, but her eyes reflected old pain. "I was one of those women." Robert felt his chest tighten. "How?" "I was promised a scholarship to study at Columbia University. When I arrived, there was no scholarship, only a debt that had to be worked off through domestic servitude initially, and later." She left the implication unspoken. "How did you escape?" "My grandfather's training," Lin Mei said simply. "Zhang's men underestimated what a desperate young woman with 15 years of kung fu training could do. I fought my way out, connected with a victims advocacy group, and eventually agreed to testify." "Why isn't Zhang in prison if you testified against him?" "The case was complex, involving multiple jurisdictions. My testimony was enough to indict him, but before the trial, key witnesses disappeared, evidence vanished, and a federal judge with connections to Zhang ruled certain evidence inadmissible. The case collapsed." "And you've been running ever since," Robert concluded. "The advocacy group connected me with people who help women disappear. New identity, new city, new life." Lin Mei's expression darkened. "It worked until someone figured out who I really am." "Someone like Richard," Robert said, pieces falling into place. "My CFO. He's been acting strange lately, taking calls he won't explain, pushing hard for this partnership with Zhang's consortium." Lin Mei's head snapped up in surprise. "Your CFO knows Victor Zhang. They've been meeting to discuss the partnership. Richard has been unusually insistent that we finalize the deal quickly." Robert's mind raced through recent events with new understanding. "He must have recognized you or discovered your connection somehow." "Robert, if Richard is involved with Zhang, then he knows exactly where I am." Lin Mei's voice took on new urgency. "You need to stay away from me. Coming here puts you in danger too." "I don't care about danger." "Well, I do." Lin Mei's composure finally cracked. "I care about you getting hurt because of me. I care about your business being destroyed because you tried to help someone you barely know. I care about good people suffering because I was selfish enough to let myself care about someone again." The naked emotion in her voice stilled Robert's objections. He reached across the table, taking her hand in his. To his surprise, she didn't pull away. "How much time do we have before immigration starts their investigation?" he asked. Marcus said 2 days, maybe less. "Give me 24 hours, Robert said, squeezing her hand gently. "Don't run, don't disappear. Give me 1 day to show you there's another option." "Robert, this isn't a business problem you can solve with strategy and resources." "Maybe not, but I'm not giving up on you without a fight." Lin Mei stared at him, torn between hope and terror. Everything in her experience told her to run immediately, But something in Robert's eyes, a certainty she hadn't seen since her grandfather promised to teach her to protect herself, made her want to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was another way. 24 hours, she said finally. But if you can't find a solution that doesn't put you at risk, I'm gone. Deal. As Robert left her apartment, neither of them noticed the dark sedan parked across the street or the telephoto lens capturing their conversation through Lin Mei's kitchen window. Victor Zhang's operatives were already implementing the next phase of their plan, and 24 hours might not be nearly enough time to save them both. The following morning, Robert summoned his executive team to an emergency meeting at Westfield corporate headquarters. Notably absent was Richard Webb, whom Robert had deliberately excluded. The assembled directors exchanged nervous glances as their CEO paced the boardroom uncharacteristically tense. "I need your complete discretion on what I'm about to share." Robert began, stopping at the head of the table. "It involves both a personal and professional matter." He outlined the situation in broad strokes, explaining that an employee at the Cardinal was being targeted through immigration investigations due to her past connection with Victor Zhang. He omitted the nature of the testimony and Lin Mei's true identity, describing her only as a material witness in a federal case against Zhang's organization. "Our proposed partnership with Zhang's consortium is hereby suspended indefinitely," Robert concluded. "I want a complete review of how this deal came to us, who advocated for it, and what we know about Zhang's businesses." "Sir," his general counsel interjected, "suspending a deal of this magnitude will have significant financial implications. The Asian expansion represents projected annual revenue of $80 million. "I'm aware of the numbers," Robert replied. "What I'm not clear on is why Richard has been pushing so aggressively for this specific partnership when there are other potential partners in the region." "Mr. Webb has been handling most of the negotiations personally," the chief operating officer noted. "He's been unusually protective of the details." "That ends today," Robert said firmly. "I want a complete financial audit of all transactions related to the Zhang negotiations, including any expenses, consultancy fees, or preliminary agreements." "A full audit will take weeks," the chief financial officer pointed out. "You have 24 hours to give me a preliminary report," Robert countered. "Focus on anything unusual or outside standard protocols." As the team dispersed with their assignments, Robert's executive assistant approached with a concerned expression. "Sir, Judge Ramirez is here to see you. She says it's urgent." Robert frowned. "Judge Ramirez, I don't recall any appointment. She insisted it concerns Sarah Lin." Robert's heart rate accelerated. "Show her in immediately." Judge Eleanor Ramirez entered the boardroom with the commanding presence of someone accustomed to being the highest authority in any room. At 63, she carried herself with regal posture, her silver hair cut in a practical bob that framed sharp, intelligent features. Though retired from the federal bench, she still radiated judicial authority in her tailored navy suit. "Mr. Westfield," she said, extending her hand, "thank you for seeing me without an appointment." "Judge Ramirez," Robert replied, shaking her hand firmly, "your reputation precedes you." "As does yours," she replied, taking a seat at the conference table. "I'll be direct. Lin Mei is in danger, and by association, so are you." Robert stared at her, momentarily speechless. "You know Lin Mei?" "I've known her for 4 years," Eleanor confirmed. "I presided over the grand jury that indicted Victor Zhang based on her testimony. When the case collapsed under suspicious circumstances, I connected her with people who could help her disappear." "You're part of the network that's been protecting her," Robert realized. "I retired from the bench shortly after the Zhang case fell apart," Eleanor explained. "Too many of my colleagues were being influenced by money or threats. I decided I could do more good working outside the system to protect victims like Lin Mei." "Why come to me now?" Eleanor's expression grew grave. "Because my sources tell me Zhang has located Lin Mei and is planning to move against her imminently. The immigration investigation is just the beginning. His people have been watching her apartment. They've been watching you as well." Robert processed this information, connecting it to Richard's strange behavior. "My CFO, Richard Webb, has been meeting with Zhang. I believe he may have identified Lin Mei and informed Zhang." "That's consistent with what we've learned," Eleanor confirmed. "Zhang's organization operates through exactly these kinds of business connections. He corrupts people in positions of power, leveraging their vulnerabilities." "What vulnerabilities could Richard have?" Eleanor reached into her briefcase, retrieving a file folder. These were compiled by our investigative team. Mr. Webb has accumulated gambling debts exceeding $12 million over the past 18 months. More concerning financial forensics indicate he's embezzled approximately $30 million from Westfield Hospitality Group through a sophisticated system of false invoices and shell companies. Robert accepted the folder with numb fingers, scanning documentation that revealed years of methodical theft by someone he had trusted implicitly. Bank statements, wire transfers, shell company registrations, all pointing to a breathtaking betrayal. "I've known Richard for 25 years, Robert said quietly. "We built this company together." "I'm sorry," Eleanor said, genuine compassion in her voice. "But right now we need to focus on protecting Lin Mei. Zhang won't stop with legal harassment. His usual pattern is escalation until his targets have no choice but to capitulate or disappear permanently. What do you suggest?" "Lin Mei needs to disappear again with a new identity, new location, completely cut off from her past." "Including me," Robert concluded. "Yes," Eleanor confirmed. "Any connection to you would create a trail Zhang could follow." Robert stood, moving to the window that overlooked the Manhattan skyline. The thought of Lin Mei vanishing from his life created an ache he hadn't expected, a sense of loss disproportionate to their brief acquaintance. "There has to be another way," he said finally. "What do you propose?" "Zhang wants Lin Mei silenced because her testimony threatens his operation. But what if we could neutralize that threat through other means?" Robert turned back to face Eleanor. "What if we could make it more costly for Zhang to pursue Lin Mei than to let her go?" "You're thinking of using your business leverage." "Exactly." Robert nodded. "The partnership he's negotiating with Westfield is worth millions, but it's also about legitimacy. Zhang wants to cleanse his public image through association with established Western brands like ours." "You'd threaten to expose him?" "No." Robert shook his head. "Threats would only escalate the situation. I'm thinking of something more subtle. Zhang operates in a world where face and reputation matter as much as money. What if we could offer him a way to save face while permanently resolving his issue with Lin Mei?" Eleanor considered this approach. "It's risky. Zhang isn't known for compromise." "Every businessman understands cost-benefit analysis," Robert countered. "Right now, silencing Lin Mei costs him relatively little. If we change that equation dramatically, he might reconsider." "How would you change the equation?" "By making her testimony irrelevant," Robert explained. "If Zhang believed that pursuing Lin Mei would trigger the release of even more damaging evidence than her testimony, evidence that would destroy not just his criminal enterprises, but his legitimate businesses too, he might see the value in a permanent ceasefire." "Do such evidence exist?" "Not yet," Robert admitted. "But given 24 hours and the resources at my disposal, I might be able to create a convincing case that it does." Eleanor studied him thoughtfully. "You care for her a great deal, don't you?" "I hardly know her," Robert replied automatically, "and yet you're willing to risk everything to protect her." Before Robert could respond, his phone chimed with an incoming message. He glanced at the screen, his expression darkening. "What is it?" Eleanor asked. "A text from an unknown number," Robert said, holding up his phone to show her the message. "Check your personal email immediately." Robert opened his email on his tablet, finding a message with no subject line from an anonymous address. The body contained only a link to a video file. With growing apprehension, he tapped the link. The video showed Lin Mei entering her apartment building after work. The timestamp indicated it had been recorded just hours earlier. A second video followed, showing close-up footage of Lin Mei through her apartment window as she packed her belongings. A final message appeared on screen. "She dies tonight unless you bring what she stole. Come alone to the address below at midnight." Robert's hand tightened around the tablet. "They're going to kidnap her tonight." "What is this about something she stole?" Eleanor asked. "I don't know," Robert admitted. "She never mentioned taking anything from Zhang." "It could be leverage," Eleanor suggested. "Evidence she kept as insurance." "Whatever it is, I need to warn her immediately." Robert dialed Lin Mei's number, his anxiety mounting as the call went straight to voicemail. He tried again with the same result. "Her phone's off," he said, "or they've already taken her." "I'll activate our network," Eleanor said, reaching for her own phone. "We have people who can check her apartment, her workplace, anywhere she might be." "I need to get to her before Zhang's people do," Robert insisted, already heading for the door. "Robert," Eleanor called after him, "if Zhang's people have her going in unprepared, will only get both of you killed. He paused at the threshold. What do you suggest? We need to plan resources and backup, Eleanor said firmly. Give me 2 hours to contact some people who can help. Former law enforcement security specialists. 2 hours could be too late. 2 hours of preparation might be the difference between saving her and joining her in whatever fate Zhang has planned, Eleanor countered. Trust me on this. I've been fighting men like Zhang for decades. Robert recognized the wisdom in her words despite his urgent need to act. 2 hours. Then we move with or without your network. Agreed, Eleanor nodded. In the meantime, there's something else you should know about Lin Mei, something that might explain what Zhang believes she stole. Robert returned to the conference table, listening intently as Judge Ramirez revealed the final pieces of Lin Mei's story details that would prove crucial in the dangerous hours ahead. Robert's phone vibrated with an incoming call from an unknown number. He answered immediately, hoping for news about Lin Mei. Westfield. Mr. Westfield, this is Detective Michael Harris, NYPD. The voice was deep authoritative. We need you to come to Bellevue Hospital immediately. Sarah Lin was found unconscious in Chinatown 3 hours ago. Robert felt his heart constrict. Is she alive? She's stable but unconscious. Concussion, 3 broken ribs, extensive bruising. I'm on my way, Robert said, ending the call and turning to Judge Ramirez. They've already made their move. Lin Mei is in Bellevue Hospital. Eleanor's expression darkened. This is classic Zhang, a warning not meant to kill but to demonstrate power. Or a distraction. Robert countered, his hand unconsciously moving to his Patek Philippe watch, a habit that intensified in moments of stress. The timepiece had been the last gift from Catherine before her diagnosis, its steady ticking a reminder that time was both precious and relentless. The text message demanded I bring what she stole to an address at midnight. This attack could be designed to manipulate my emotions, cloud my judgment. Either way, we need to see her, Eleanor agreed, following him to the elevator. My contacts can provide security at the hospital while we determine our next move. They rode to Bellevue in tense silence, Robert's mind racing through possible scenarios. The hospital corridors were harshly lit, antiseptic scents hanging in the air as a tired-looking detective met them at the nurse's station. Detective Martinez, she introduced herself, extending a hand. You're here for Sarah Lin? Yes, Robert confirmed. How is she stable? She regained consciousness about 20 minutes ago, but hasn't said much. Doctor says the concussion is serious but not life-threatening. Was she able to identify her attackers? Eleanor asked. Said she never saw their faces. 3 men grabbed her as she left work, forced her into a van, beat her, then dumped her in Chinatown. Detective Martinez's expression was grim. They left this in her jacket pocket. She handed Robert a photograph that made his blood freeze. It showed him and Lin Mei leaving the diner 4 nights earlier, but Lin Mei's face had been circled in red ink with a message written on the back in Chinese characters. Can you read this? Martinez asked. No, Robert admitted, turning to Eleanor. The judge studied the characters, her expression growing more concerned. It's written in traditional Chinese. It says the runaway witness will return what was taken, or all who shelter her will suffer the same fate. Martinez frowned. What exactly did she take? That's what we need to find out. Robert replied, his gaze fixed on Lin Mei's room down the hall. May we see her? Briefly, she needs rest. Lin Mei lay still against white hospital sheets, her normally vibrant presence diminished by the clinical surroundings. Bruises darkened one side of her face and a bandage wrapped around her forehead. Around her neck, Robert noticed a phoenix pendant on a thin silver chain, something he'd never seen her wear before. Her eyes opened as they entered a recognition, quickly followed by alarm. Robert, you shouldn't be here, she whispered, voice hoarse. It's not safe. Neither is anywhere else, apparently. He moved to her bedside, taking her hand gently. What happened? Zhang's men, she confirmed. They said it was a message, a preview of what's coming if I don't return what I took. Her gaze shifted to Eleanor. Judge Ramirez, how? I still have friends watching out for you, Lin Mei, Eleanor replied softly. Lin Mei closed her eyes briefly. I should have disappeared sooner. Zhang would have found you eventually, Eleanor said. He has resources we can't match indefinitely. Lin Mei, Robert said gently, the message in your pocket. What exactly did you take from Zhang? She hesitated, glancing at the door to ensure they were alone. Her fingers moved unconsciously to the phoenix pendant at her throat. Evidence. When I escaped 4 years ago, I took a flash drive from Zhang's office. It contains financial records linking his legitimate businesses to human trafficking operations, detailed accounting of bribes paid to officials, and lists of victims with their purchase prices and destinations. Why didn't you give this to the prosecutors? Eleanor asked. I did, Lin Mei replied. They said the evidence was inadmissible because of how it was obtained. But I kept a copy as insurance hidden where even Zhang couldn't find it. Until now, Robert concluded. He doesn't have it, Lin Mei clarified. But he knows it exists and he wants it destroyed before it can be used against him again. Where is it? Robert asked. Lin Mei's eyes met his, weighing trust against survival instincts honed through years of running. She touched the phoenix pendant again. In a safe deposit box at First National Bank in San Francisco, registered under my birth name. This pendant is the key. It contains a microchip with the access codes. We need to retrieve it before Zhang's people do, Eleanor said. They can't access it without me, Lin Mei assured them. But there's something worse. My grandfather, Master Wei Chen, has been arrested in San Francisco on false immigration charges. Zhang's people are holding him as leverage. Robert felt pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. That's why Zhang is so confident you'll cooperate. He has your grandfather. Lin Mei nodded, tears gathering in her eyes. Grandfather is all the family I have left. He sacrificed everything to protect me when my parents wanted to send me back to China after I escaped from Zhang. We'll help him, Robert promised, squeezing her hand gently. How Zhang has connections everywhere, even in federal agencies. So do I, Eleanor interjected. And more importantly, I still have jurisdiction to review immigration cases. I can get your grandfather released, but I'll need to fly to San Francisco immediately. Robert turned to the judge. Go, I'll stay with Lin Mei and deal with Zhang. Robert, you can't face Zhang alone, Lin Mei protested. His people will kill you. They won't, Robert assured her with more confidence than he felt. Zhang is a businessman first and foremost. He understands negotiation and self-interest. This goes beyond business, Lin Mei insisted, struggling to sit up despite her injuries. This is personal for him. I damaged his pride, his reputation. Then we'll offer him something more valuable than revenge, Robert replied. Judge Ramirez, can you arrange protection for Lin Mei while you're gone? Already done, Eleanor confirmed. 2 former FBI agents will be stationed outside her door, and I've alerted hospital security to restrict visitor access. Good. Once you're in San Francisco, contact me immediately with any news about Master Chen. Robert turned back to Lin Mei. I need you to tell me everything you know about Zhang. His businesses, his methods, his weaknesses. Lin Mei studied him intently. You're planning something. I'm creating options, Robert corrected. Now rest. You'll need your strength when this is over. After leaving the hospital, Robert instructed his driver to take him directly to the Cardinal. The restaurant was closed, but a single light burned in the office above the dining room. Richard Webb sat at the antique desk reviewing documents when Robert entered without knocking. Robert, Richard said, surprise quickly masked by a professional smile. I didn't expect you this evening. Clearly, Robert replied coldly. Otherwise, you might have prepared a better explanation for this. He tossed a folder onto the desk, financial records spreading across the polished surface. Richard glanced at the documents, his complexion paling. Where did you get these? Does it matter $30 million, Richard? From my company, from our partnership. Robert, I can explain. Save it, Robert cut him off. I know about the gambling debts. I know about your arrangement with Victor Zhang. I know you identified Lin Mei and told Zhang where to find her. Richard's facade crumbled, shoulders sagging in defeat. How much do you know? Everything, Robert said, though it was a calculated bluff. The only question remaining is why. 25 years of friendship, and you sold me out for what? Money revenge against a martial arts master who rejected you decades ago. Richard looked up sharply. She told you about that. You underestimated how much Lin Mei and I have shared, Robert replied, sensing a vulnerability he could exploit. I know about your failed attempt to join Wei Chen's school, your humiliation when he rejected you. That old man looked right through me, Richard said bitterly. Said I lack character and discipline. Do you have any idea what that feels like? To have someone dismiss your entire worth in a single sentence? And so you waited 20 years for revenge. That seems excessive even for you, Richard. It wasn't about revenge, not initially, Richard admitted. The gambling started after my divorce. Small bets at first, then larger ones to recover losses. Before I knew it, I owed millions to people who don't send polite collection notices. So you stole from me, Robert stated, the betrayal still raw despite his outward calm. I borrowed, Richard countered weakly. I was going to replace it after the Zhang deal closed. The partnership would have generated enough profit to cover everything. And Lin Mei was just collateral damage, a bonus for Zhang to ensure the deal went through. Richard had the decency to look ashamed. I didn't know what he planned to do with her. He just said he had unfinished business with Wei Chen's granddaughter. He had her beaten and left in Chinatown. Robert said, his voice dangerously quiet. He's holding her grandfather hostage and threatening anyone who helps her. Robert, I didn't know it would go this far. What did you think would happen when you connected a vindictive billionaire with a woman who testified against him in a federal investigation? Robert shook his head in disgust. The partnership is over, Richard. So is our friendship. You're making a mistake, Richard warned, desperation creeping into his voice. Without my connections, the Asian expansion will proceed without you, or it won't, Robert finished. Either way, you'll have no part in it. You have 24 hours to resign officially, citing health concerns, or whatever excuse preserves your dignity. After that, I go to the authorities with evidence of your embezzlement. You would send me to prison after everything we've built together. I built this company, Robert corrected. You were along for the ride, skimming profits and undermining me at every turn. The only reason I'm giving you 24 hours is to honor the memory of a friendship that clearly meant more to me than to you. Robert turned to leave, but Richard called after him. This won't end here. Zhang won't stop because you fired me. If anything, you've made the situation worse. Then I'll deal with Zhang directly. With what good intentions? Richard laughed bitterly. Zhang has been acquiring and discarding people like collectible art for 20 years. He has politicians, judges, and police commissioners in 3 countries on his payroll. You think your money and your American lawyers scare him? Robert paused at the door, his hand resting on the frame of the Cardinal, the restaurant that had brought Lin Mei into his life. In these elegant rooms where wealth and privilege reigned, he discovered something money couldn't buy: a connection that had awakened him from years of emotional slumber. We'll find out. As Robert walked away, the weight of Richard's betrayal settled on his shoulders like a physical burden. For 25 years, he had trusted Richard implicitly, sharing business strategies, personal confidences, even introducing him to Catherine and Elise's family. The depth of the deception was staggering. Outside, Robert checked his phone to find a message from Judge Ramirez confirming her flight to San Francisco. His security team reported that Lin Mei remained safe at the hospital under guard. The deadline to deliver what she stole to Zhang was rapidly approaching, just 3 hours away. Robert made a decision. Rather than wait for Zhang to dictate terms, he would force a confrontation on his own territory. He called the number that had sent the threatening text. "This is Robert Westfield," he said when someone answered. "Tell Mr. Zhang I wish to meet with him immediately to discuss Lin Mei and the flash drive." A long pause followed. "One moment, Mr. Westfield." Minutes later, a cultured voice came on the line. "Mr. Westfield, Victor Zhang, I'm pleased you have decided to be reasonable." "I'm a businessman, Mr. Zhang. I understand negotiation." "Then you understand non-negotiable demands," Zhang replied smoothly. "The flash drive for the girl's life, and perhaps yours as well. Midnight, as my message indicated." "New terms," Robert countered. "We meet at the Cardinal in 1 hour. Just you and me discussing this like the businessmen we are." "Why would I agree to this change?" "Because the Cardinal has no active security cameras between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. Because the restaurant is empty and secluded at this hour. Because if anything happens to me, a detailed dossier on your operations will be released to every major news outlet and law enforcement agency in the country." Another pause. "You're bluffing, Mr. Westfield." "Perhaps," Robert admitted. "But can you afford to find out? 1 hour, Mr. Zhang. Come alone, as will I." The Cardinal was eerily silent when Robert arrived at its elegant dining room shrouded in shadows. He had dismissed the night security staff, citing a private meeting, and now sat alone at a corner table waiting. A single light illuminated his position, leaving the rest of the restaurant in darkness. Precisely on time, Victor Zhang entered through the front door, moving with the casual confidence of someone accustomed to controlling every room he occupied. In person, Zhang radiated a cold charisma, his bespoke suit and immaculate appearance, at odds with the predatory calculation in his eyes. "Mr. Westfield," Zhang said, approaching the table without haste. "This is an unusual venue for a negotiation. Please sit," Robert gestured to the chair across from him. "Would you like a drink?" "No," Zhang replied, remaining standing. "I prefer to conclude our business efficiently." "Where is the flash drive?" "Not here," Robert admitted, "but within reach should we come to an agreement." Zhang's expression hardened. "You said—" "I said we would discuss it," Robert corrected, "and we will. But first I'd like to understand what it contains that concerns you so deeply." "You know what it contains," Zhang said dismissively. "Lin Mei would have told you." "She told me it contains financial records linking your businesses to human trafficking," Robert confirmed. "What she couldn't explain is why you continue to pursue such activities when your legitimate enterprises generate billions annually." Something like surprise flickered across Zhang's features. "You Americans always reduce everything to financial calculations. This isn't about money, Mr. Westfield. It's about face, about honor. Lin Mei didn't just steal information. She humiliated me in front of my associates. She made me look weak. And in your world, that's unforgivable," Robert concluded. "In any world, actions have consequences," Zhang replied. "Lin Mei made her choice 4 years ago. Now she must accept the result of that choice." "What about your choices?" Robert asked. "The choice to traffic young women, to bribe officials, to pursue personal vendettas at the expense of business opportunities. You presume to judge me." Zhang's voice remained calm, but his eyes hardened. "You who built your empire on privileged connections and inherited advantage." "I built my empire from nothing," Robert corrected, "starting as a night manager in a cheap hotel, working 80-hour weeks for 20 years. I understand ambition, Mr. Zhang. What I don't understand is cruelty for its own sake." Zhang studied Robert for a long moment. "You care for her," he observed. "This waitress you've known for, what, a few months? Remarkable how quickly a man of your stature can be manipulated by a pretty face and a sad story. Is that what you think this is, manipulation? What else could it be? Lin Mei is a professional victim, Mr. Westfield. She has been trained since childhood by her grandfather to exploit weakness in others. Wei Chen may present himself as a humble martial arts master, but he has been my enemy for decades, using his school and his family to undermine my position in the community." Robert heard the deeper currents beneath Zhang's words, the personal animus that transcended business rivalry. This isn't just about Lin Mei or the flash drive. This is about Wei Chen himself. Zhang's expression confirmed Robert's insight. "The old man has opposed me at every turn, poisoning community leaders against me interfering in my affairs. Lin Mei is merely an extension of his interference. And yet you keep her grandfather alive as leverage," Robert noted. "If your quarrel is truly with Master Chen, why not deal with him directly?" "Wei Chen is more valuable as a bargaining chip than as a corpse," Zhang replied coldly. "His suffering ensures Lin Mei's cooperation." "What if I offered you an alternative?" Robert leaned forward. "A way to resolve this situation permanently while preserving your public image and your business interest." Zhang remained standing, but his expression registered curiosity. "I'm listening." $15 million, Robert said simply. "Cash untraceable in exchange for Lin Mei's freedom and her grandfather's release. You sign a non-disclosure agreement preventing you from ever discussing her testimony or the evidence she obtained. She signs a similar agreement regarding your operations. A clean break, legally binding in any jurisdiction." "Money," Zhang looked almost disappointed. "You think this can be resolved with money?" "Not just money," Robert clarified. "Face. Public acknowledgement that you were the wrong party in this situation. A press release from Westfield Hospitality Group announcing the termination of Richard Webb for financial improprieties, with a statement of regret for any association with questionable elements that may have damaged your reputation." Zhang's eyes narrowed slightly. "Go on." "Additionally, Westfield will proceed with a modified version of our Asian expansion, with your consortium receiving preferential terms on property acquisitions in the region. The business relationship continues cleansed of any controversy. And the flash drive, destroyed in your presence, Robert promised. With your technical experts verifying no copies remain. Zhang finally sat considering the offer. Why would I accept this compromise when I could simply eliminate the problem permanently? Because eliminating the problem creates greater risk, Robert explained. Lin Mei isn't the only one with evidence against you. Judge Ramirez has been building a case for years, gathering testimony from other victims, tracking your financial transactions through shell companies. The flash drive is merely one piece of a larger puzzle. Bluffing again, Mr. Westfield. Testing your business acumen, Robert countered. You've built an impressive empire, Mr. Zhang. Would you risk it all for personal revenge against a young woman who was simply trying to survive, against an old man whose only crime was protecting his granddaughter? Zhang was silent for a long moment, his mind clearly calculating probabilities and outcomes. 20 million, he said finally, and Wei Chen leaves the country permanently, returns to China and stays there. 18 million, Robert countered. Master Chen can choose his destination, and all surveillance of Lin Mei ceases immediately and permanently. You negotiate like someone with experience in these matters. Zhang observed a hint of respect in his voice. I negotiate like someone who understands what truly matters to my opponent, Robert replied. This was never about the flash drive or even Lin Mei's testimony. This was about pride, about being defied by Wei Chen and his family. I'm offering you a victory you can claim publicly while preserving what's most valuable to you. Zhang extended his hand. We have an agreement, Mr. Westfield. The details to be formalized by our respective legal teams, of course. Robert shook the offered hand, feeling neither triumph nor relief, but a cold certainty that he was making a deal with a predator who would honor the letter of their agreement while seeking advantage in its execution. One final condition, Robert added. Lin Mei and her grandfather remain under my personal protection going forward. Any action against them, direct or indirect, nullifies our agreement and triggers the release of all evidence against you. Zhang's smile never reached his eyes. You are either very brave or very foolish, Mr. Westfield. Time will tell which. After Zhang departed, Robert remained at the table processing the negotiation. He had committed $18 million of his personal fortune to protect a woman he had known for mere months, yet the decision felt unquestionably right. What troubled him was not the law, but the knowledge that Zhang was unlikely to simply walk away regardless of their agreement. His phone rang, Judge Ramirez calling from San Francisco. I've secured Master Chen's release, she reported. Immigration officials discovered procedural errors in his case after I made some calls to former colleagues. He's with me now. Is he all right? Physically, yes. They didn't harm him, just held him in administrative detention. He's more concerned about Lin Mei than himself. Tell him she's safe, Robert assured her. I've reached an agreement with Zhang, 18 million for their freedom and safety. Eleanor was silent for a moment. You negotiated directly with Zhang. That was incredibly risky. It was necessary, Robert replied. Zhang needed to see that I wasn't acting from fear or desperation. Tell Master Chen we'll arrange for him to see Lin Mei as soon as possible. He wants to come to New York immediately, Eleanor said. He's quite insistent. Book 2 first-class tickets on the next available flight, Robert instructed. I'll arrange for a car to meet you at JFK. After ending the call, Robert contacted his security team at the hospital, confirming that Lin Mei remained safe. Then he called his attorneys, instructing them to begin drafting the agreements needed to formalize his arrangement with Zhang. Finally, he contacted his personal financial advisor to arrange the transfer of $18 million to escrow accounts pending completion of the deal. As he was about to leave the Cardinal, a figure emerged from the shadows near the bar. Richard Webb stood there, a gun held unsteadily in his right hand. You shouldn't have come alone, Robert, Richard said, his voice strained. Zhang's men are watching this place. Robert remained seated, outwardly calm, despite the surge of adrenaline. Are they your men now too, Richard? This isn't personal, Richard insisted, though the tremor in his hand suggested otherwise. Zhang knows you're bluffing about the evidence. He wants insurance that you'll follow through. And what's your role in this kidnapper-assassin? Neither seems like your style. I'm just delivering a message. Richard's eyes darted nervously toward the windows. Zhang's agreeing to your terms, but with modifications. He wants Lin Mei to personally deliver the flash drive and verify its destruction. No proxies. Robert assessed the situation, noting Richard's nervous demeanor, the way he kept glancing at his watch. You're not here on Zhang's behalf, he realized. This is your own play. You're trying to salvage something from this disaster. Richard's expression confirmed it. I've lost everything, Robert. My career, my reputation, my freedom. Once those embezzlement records become public, I need leverage to negotiate my own deal with Zhang. And I'm that leverage. You or the girl, Zhang would pay handsomely for either. Robert slowly stood, his hands visible. Put the gun down, Richard. This isn't who you are. You don't know who I am anymore, Richard replied bitterly. 25 years and you never saw me. Really saw me. Always the golden boy, everything coming so easily to you. Do you know what it's like living in your shadow? Being the sidekick to the great Robert Westfield? This is about envy. All of this betrayal because you couldn't handle not being in the spotlight. It's about recognition, Richard's voice rose, the gun wavering dangerously. About getting what I deserve after decades of watching you take credit for my ideas, my connections, my sacrifices. As Richard's emotional state deteriorated, Robert saw his opportunity. In one fluid motion, he upended the heavy oak table, using it as a shield as he lunged forward. Richard fired the bullet, splintering wood as Robert tackled him to the ground. The gun clattered across the marble floor as they struggled. Despite being older, Robert's regular workouts gave him the advantage over Richard's desk-bound physique. He pinned his former friend, restraining him until security arrived, alerted by the gunshot. You've lost everything that mattered, Robert said quietly as Richard was led away. Not because I took it from you, but because you couldn't see what you already had. Dawn was breaking over Manhattan when Robert finally returned to the hospital. Lin Mei was awake, her bruised face turning toward him as he entered her room. You look terrible, she observed, her voice stronger than the previous night. You're one to talk, he replied with a tired smile, taking the chair beside her bed. Did you meet with Zhang? Yes, we've reached an agreement. Lin Mei's eyes widened in surprise. What kind of agreement? $18 million for your freedom and your grandfather's. Zhang drops his vendetta, we destroy the flash drive, everyone moves forward. $18 million, Lin Mei repeated in disbelief. Robert, that's an insane amount of money. It's just money, he said simply. I have more. Zhang won't honor any agreement, no matter the price, she warned. His pride won't allow it. That's why the agreement includes legal protections and consequences for violation, Robert explained. Plus, your grandfather is being released as we speak. Judge Ramirez is bringing him to New York on the next flight. Tears filled Lin Mei's eyes. Grandfather is free, truly. Truly, Robert confirmed. They should arrive this afternoon. Lin Mei reached for his hand, holding it tightly. I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to thank me, Robert replied, squeezing her hand gently. Just get well. Your grandfather will want to see you at your strongest. Why did you do all this, risk so much for someone you barely know? Robert considered the question carefully. In my life, I've acquired wealth, properties, businesses, all the trappings of success. But in recent years, particularly since Catherine died, I've found myself questioning what any of it means. What's the purpose of resources if not to protect what matters? And I matter, Lin Mei asked softly. More than I expected, Robert admitted. More than makes sense given how little time we've known each other. A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the muted sounds of the hospital beyond the door. Eventually, Lin Mei spoke again. My real name is Lin Mei Chen, she said. I was born in San Francisco's Chinatown. My mother died when I was 3, and my father returned to China for business, leaving me with my grandfather. I grew up in the rooms above his martial arts school, learning kung fu alongside his other students. Robert listened without interruption as Lin Mei shared her story, each revelation a piece of the puzzle that completed the extraordinary woman before him. When I was 17, I won a scholarship to study international business at Columbia University. 2 months after I arrived in New York, I discovered the scholarship was a front for Zhang's trafficking operation. Most girls were sent to wealthy clients as domestic servants, or worse. Because of my education and appearance, I was kept for Zhang's personal staff, serving at his private events. Her voice remained steady, but Robert saw the pain in her eyes as she continued. After 3 months, I managed to escape using the skills my grandfather had taught me. I contacted a victims advocacy group who connected me with federal investigators. My testimony helped build the case against Zhang, but as you know, it fell apart. Judge Ramirez helped me disappear, and I've been moving from city to city ever since, always looking over my shoulder. Until now, Robert said gently. Until now. Lin Mei agreed. Though I still find it hard to believe Zhang will simply walk away even for $18 million. He won't, Robert acknowledged. But the legal agreements we're putting in place will make it costly for him to continue his vendetta. More importantly, we're changing the dynamics. You won't be alone and vulnerable anymore. Lin Mei sat up straighter, wincing slightly at the movement. I'm tired of running, she said with sudden conviction. I won't hide anymore. If Zhang breaks his word, I want to fight back. But on my terms, not his. Robert was surprised by the shift in her demeanor. What are you proposing? The flash drive isn't the only evidence, Lin Mei revealed. I've been gathering information on Zhang's operations for years. Names, dates, witness, testimonies. I've been connecting with other victims through encrypted channels. We have enough to destroy him completely if we coordinate our efforts. That's incredibly dangerous, Robert cautioned. So is living in fear, Lin Mei countered. My grandfather taught me that true courage isn't about being fearless. It's about facing fear and acting anyway. Let's see how Zhang honors his agreement first, Robert suggested. We have options now that we didn't have before. What happens after the agreement is seen and where do I go? The uncertainty in her voice revealed how accustomed she had become to impermanence. That's entirely your choice, Robert assured her. You could stay in New York, return to San Francisco with your grandfather, or go somewhere new. Whatever you decide, I'll help make it possible. And us, Lin Mei asked cautiously, what happens to whatever this is between us? That's also your choice. Robert replied, his hand still holding hers. I care for you, Lin Mei, more deeply than I expected to care for anyone again after Catherine. But I understand that your life has been defined by others making decisions for you. I won't be another person who limits your freedom. Before she could respond, a knock at the door announced the arrival of a nurse. Ms. Lin has visitors, she announced. Judge Ramirez entered first, followed by a dignified elderly man whose upright posture and alert eyes belied his 75 years. Master Wei Chen moved with the fluid grace of a lifetime martial artist, his weathered face lighting up at the sight of his granddaughter. Mei Hua, he said softly, using her childhood name as he approached the bed. Grandfather, Lin Mei replied, tears flowing freely now. You're safe. Thanks to your friends, Wei Chen acknowledged, nodding respectfully to Judge Ramirez and Robert. You have chosen your allies wisely, granddaughter. They chose me, Lin Mei corrected, smiling through her tears. Wei Chen turned to Robert, studying him with penetrating intensity. Mr. Westfield, Judge Ramirez has told me of your courage in facing Victor Zhang. Few men would risk so much for someone they have known so briefly. Your granddaughter is an exceptional person, Master Chen, Robert replied. Helping her was the only choice I could make. The only choice, Wei Chen repeated thoughtfully. In my experience, Mr. Westfield, when a man says something was his only choice, he reveals not limitation, but character. The days that followed were a whirlwind of legal negotiations, medical consultations, and security arrangements. Zhang's attorneys scrutinized every clause of the agreements, seeking advantages and loopholes that Robert's legal team methodically closed. The final documents signed in the neutral territory of a Manhattan law firm ran to over 100 pages of binding commitments and consequences for violations. On the day the flash drive was to be verified and destroyed, an unexpected complication arose. As Zhang's technical experts prepared to examine the device, Lin Mei stepped forward, her phoenix pendant gleaming against her black dress. Before we proceed, she said, her voice clear and strong, I need your personal assurance, Mr. Zhang. Zhang's eyes narrowed. The agreements provide all necessary assurances, Ms. Chen. Paper promises can be broken, Lin Mei replied. I want to hear you say it, in front of witnesses, that our history ends today. No more pursuit, no more vendettas, no more using others as pawns in your game. The room fell silent, all eyes on Zhang. For a moment, his mask of civility slipped, revealing the cold fury beneath. Then, with visible effort, he regained his composure. You have my word, he said finally. Our business is concluded today. Lin Mei held his gaze. Remember, Mr. Zhang, I may not be hiding anymore, but neither am I defenseless. Break your word and you'll find I've learned more from my grandfather than just kung fu. The flash drive was verified and destroyed in Zhang's presence, his technical experts confirming no copies remained. $18 million transferred into accounts beyond the reach of American tax authorities. Non-disclosure agreements were executed by all parties, and Victor Zhang departed New York without further direct contact with Lin Mei or her grandfather. Richard Webb resigned from Westfield Hospitality Group, citing health concerns and a desire to spend time with family. A carefully worded press release announced the discovery of financial irregularities during his tenure, with appropriate authorities being notified. Facing multiple criminal charges for embezzlement and attempted kidnapping, he eventually accepted a plea deal testimony against Zhang's financial operations, earning him a reduced sentence at a minimum security facility. Zhang himself found his carefully cultivated reputation under unexpected scrutiny when several international investigations into human trafficking simultaneously focused on his business associates. Though nothing could be directly traced to him, the coincidental timing suggested Judge Ramirez's network had been busy. Within a year, his empire began to fracture as investors withdrew and authorities in multiple countries froze assets pending investigation. 6 months after the agreement, Robert stood in the newly renovated courtyard of the Waitress School of Traditional Martial Arts in San Francisco's Chinatown. The historic building had been carefully restored with Robert's financial assistance, preserving its cultural heritage while updating facilities for a new generation of students. Lin Mei moved through the courtyard with practiced ease, instructing a group of young women in basic self-defense techniques. Her physical injuries had healed completely, though Robert knew the psychological wounds would take longer to fade. Still, each day seemed to bring her more fully back to herself, reclaiming the confidence and purpose that had been interrupted by Zhang's pursuit. The phoenix pendant remained at her throat, no longer a key to hidden evidence, but a symbol of her rebirth. "She is flourishing," Wei Chen observed, joining Robert at the edge of the training area. The teacher emerges from the student. "Bah, she's remarkable," Robert agreed. "The women's self-defense program was entirely her idea. A way to transform her experience into protection for others?" Wei Chen nodded approvingly. "The highest form of martial wisdom is not defeating enemies, but preventing the need for battle." Lin Mei concluded the lesson, bowing to her students before approaching Robert and her grandfather. The afternoon sunlight caught the highlights in her hair, now worn loose around her shoulders rather than in the severe ponytail of her waitress days. "What did you think?" she asked, slightly breathless from exertion. "Impressive," Robert replied, "though I notice you're taking it easy on them." "First-month students," Lin Mei explained with a smile. "We don't break them until the second month." "Wise policy," Wei Chen agreed solemnly, though his eyes twinkled with amusement. "Mr. Westfield, will you join us for dinner this evening? I have prepared my special clay pot chicken." "I wouldn't miss it," Robert assured him. Over the past months, he had divided his time between New York and San Francisco, gradually transferring more operational responsibility to his executive team while focusing on strategic decisions and special projects. His Patek Philippe watch, once a reminder of Catherine's absence, now marked the rhythm of a new chapter in his life. His relationship with Lin Mei had evolved at its own pace, neither rushed by artificial timelines nor constrained by conventional expectations. They moved forward with mutual respect and growing affection, each step a choice rather than an obligation. The Cardinal, once just another acquisition in his hospitality empire, had become a symbol of their unexpected connection, now being renovated to include a discreet martial arts training facility in its basement for women seeking self-defense skills. As they walked through Chinatown's busy streets toward Wei Chen's apartment above the school, Robert reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them together. From a chance encounter during a restaurant robbery to negotiating with a dangerous criminal for her freedom, their story defied conventional logic. Yet here they were building something meaningful from the wreckage of threat and violence. The Wei Chen School now included a foundation that helped victims of trafficking rebuild their lives. Lin Mei was pursuing a degree in international relations, combining her language skills and personal experience to advocate for vulnerable populations. Their work had already helped authorities identify and dismantle 2 trafficking networks operating on the East Coast. And Robert had found something he hadn't realized: he was seeking purpose, beyond profit connection, beyond convenience, meaning beyond material success. At 52, when many of his contemporaries were planning retirement or second marriages to much younger women, he had discovered that life could still surprise him with its possibilities. That evening, as they gathered around Wei Chen's modest dining table, the elderly master raised his teacup in a traditional toast. To new beginnings that honor old wisdom, he said, his gaze encompassing both Lin Mei and Robert. To battles fought not with fist but with courage. To family found rather than given. To family, Robert echoed, meeting Lin Mei's eyes across the table. Her smile, open and unguarded, was all the confirmation he needed that some journeys, however improbable their beginning, led exactly where one was meant to go. Outside, the lights of San Francisco glittered against the darkening sky, a city of reinvention and second chances. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges and opportunities, but tonight was for appreciation of the present moment, for gratitude that sometimes justice and healing were possible in a world that often seemed to favor neither. The final justice, Robert reflected, was not in courtrooms or legal agreements, not in financial settlements, or even in Zhang's eventual legal troubles that arose from other sources. The final justice was here in this room, in the quiet dignity of lives reclaimed from fear, in the simple human right to determine one's own path forward. As the evening progressed with conversation and laughter, Robert Westfield, who had spent decades building an empire of hotels and restaurants, recognized that he had finally found something far more valuable, a place where he truly belonged.